Hey everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday One Thing. I'm your host Hamza, joined by my co-hosts Maury, and today we're also joined by Vas. How's it going, Maury? How's it going, Vas?
Good.
Things
How
are
are
going
you?
great. Vas, we're so happy to have you, our
Happy
resident
to be back.
entrepreneur.
Yeah,
And Gen
Vas.
Z.
Yeah, Vas is our resident entrepreneur, and on this podcast, also the resident Gen Z. We had a bit of a debate about the boundary lines of what makes somebody Gen Z or what makes them a millennial. Turns out Maury was wrong, and indeed, Vas is a Gen Z, as am I. I think borderline, and that's relevant because today's topic is actually about Gen Zs and the rise in Gen Z entrepreneurship in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, to quickly sketch out what's been happening over the last 12 months, the impact of the economic crisis that came as a result of COVID-19 has been felt by all over the world, and for certain generations, particularly the millennials and the Gen Z, this is the second economic crisis they've seen in their lifetimes. And based on the research we have from the 2008 financial crisis, which happened to millennials at about the same age as the COVID-19 crisis has happened to people in Generation Z, we know that things don't look too good. Things like these tend to have a lasting impact on careers. It has an impact on employment levels. It even has an impact on future life expectancy. But is there a case for optimism? To discuss that, we're going to be talking a little bit about what seems to be a wave of entrepreneurialism among the kids, shall we say? So what we do know is that as a result of the changing in market trends and the change in consumption and the rise in e-commerce over the last 12 months, more and more freelancers, more and more entrepreneurs tend to be aged 25 and below. So a survey in 2020 found that 53% of Gen Z men and women expect to be running their own companies in the wake of the recession, compared to 45% just a year earlier. And swiping through TikTok and Instagram, it doesn't take too long to discover that a lot of the influencers that happen to be from this age cohort are looking to use their clout, looking to use their social media following to also build out their own brands and really participate in the gig economy from a creative space that goes beyond just the online content they produce, but also sometimes in the form of direct to consumer goods. Today, approximately 36% of freelancers or Gen Z freelancers started during the pandemic. And in the combined millennial Gen Z workforce, about 47% had done such work in the past 12 months. So I guess what I'd love to get a sense of from you guys, Maury, Vas, is could this trend, stay? Is this something that's here to stay, or is this just a blip and the Gen Z kids are just going to go back to doing their things as the pandemic wraps up? Vas, how about you?
Yeah, so I think that what has been the biggest learning lesson and the biggest perspective change that I've seen, at least from like a Gen Z perspective, is the fact that there's a huge shift in the behavior of a lot of people who are online. This is not a situation where, like, if you relate it back to like the Great Depression, where there was no online economy for you to kind of really take advantage of when unemployment rates went through the roof. There was really no opportunity to make something of yourself. Whereas right now, like Gen Zs and millennials, like we've grown up with the internet. We know the opportunities that exist. And it's close to zero to actually start a business these days. So this whole shift to entrepreneurship is not surprising to me. There has never been less barriers to entry to actually get into this. And where doors and amongst many other doors have been shut across people who are just recent graduates, and entry-level jobs have actually been rescinded due to the pandemic. This is the next natural shift for a lot of people who have seen great successes with people, just whether it's on TikTok sharing business tips or financial wellness tips on how to make that a possibility. That's what I've seen being like the biggest lesson. But also is also a really good reminder that 2008 was one part of it. And yes, we might have been a bit more younger, but this is the first time where I think we are actually starting to feel the pressure of it. And it's a big reminder once more that, you know, having just one source of income is just a little too close to zero. And just being able to create an impact and actually, you know, convert passions into profits is a huge part of like what has been the biggest transition. And I think there was even stats upon this that like, when you put into perspective, like COVID has reminded us all so clearly, like what is really important in our lives. And yes, you can stay at these jobs that maybe are not as fulfilling, but it also put things into perspective. Like, do you want to continue down this path? If anything, there's actually been a huge shift, not only just into businesses, but people going back to school, taking on other directions of their university career paths, or even just learning new skills so they can fine tune their overall portfolio skills. So I think that's actually something that is not going to just end off once the pandemic ends. We're really all fine tuning our own tools to just make this something that can continue to make them really just passionate about the work that they're doing moving forward.
Maury, well, first of all, thanks, Vas. Great points there. Just to, I guess, follow on that and some of the things Vas said. Maury, something we've spoken about at length on the Wednesday One Thing over the past several months is how we expect entrepreneurship to be easier and to be more normal going forward. Do you think, given the tools that people in general have with things like different social media platforms and different ways of reaching an audience and the importance of building your own personal brand. You see a lot of potential for people to convert their personal brands, for example, into the kind of businesses that we at Clearbanc speak to every day?
Well, I think the first thing you said is pretty laughable. Entrepreneurship is probably the hardest thing. Like starting your own business, putting yourself out there is never easy. So what the second point is, everyone is now a business. Like you can, jump into Clubhouse, just talk about the things you're passionate about and build a community. You can get on now Dispo, be one of the first users on Dispo and do something creative. I know you're not on Dispo, Hamza, because you're an elder zillennial and you're out of these trends. But for the people who are with it, and this is where I'm actually very optimistic for Gen Z. Us millennials, a lot of us were sold the dream, like go to school, be an accountant, be a lawyer. That's what's going to lead you to happiness. But then you end up in a job that maybe you're not so interested in. Whereas now, necessity is the mother of all invention. You're in a position where you're cut off from the traditional economy, but you have to do something. So you're taking all these tools and really understanding the algorithms of TikTok and understanding these new media. And those are the people who really do have a significant advantage. I talk to some of my friends who they're trying to figure out like, okay, I have the money to start a business, but I just need someone to run my marketing. And that's where I think Gen Z has a huge advantage. They understand, they're very sarcastic. They're very, to some degree, like nihilistic and self-deprecating, but they actually have a really good understanding of how the media landscape is shaking out. So they have, I think, the best opportunity to succeed in the new economy.
Yeah, great points there, Maury. And just for clarification, when I meant easier in the way that climbing Everest is easier than climbing Mount K2. So still pretty hard overall. And just to get a couple of thoughts from you, Vas, on this as well. Obviously, you've built your own businesses and done that at a fairly young age. Just want to get a sense of what when you were starting out your first business, what you were looking to take advantage of in I guess the space around you, and whether or how that's changed in light of the last 12 months where more and more of everything is online.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question, Hamza, and it has me thinking in so many different directions in the way that entrepreneurship has changed since when I first started to like a year into my businesses and on, and then today in the present tense of 2021 amongst the pandemic. I think when I reflect back though to like why I started at such a young age, I believe it was only like 18 or 19 when I really started my first actual business, not just like some random kind of like side gig. But the biggest realization I had was that I'm young. I I grew up with technology. I know how technology works. I have a different creativity than, I would argue, than like what others have really been adopted to in terms of marketing and just being able to share their messages across and just really resonate with the Gen Z audience. But there's also just that other perspective where it's like, I'm at such a young age, I don't have all the commitments that typically a lot of people who may be older have. Like, I don't have kids, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have a lot of those stresses that just add on and pile on to an entrepreneur's life. And if there was ever going to be a time for me to just take a risk, take on a chance to build something incredible, it would be something that I can get my hands in and get my feet dirty, and my hands and feet dirty from the beginning at a young age, and then curate myself with a really great community of people who have done it before and just continue to learn from them as well. And when we shift it to today's environment, I think the reality is also that there's never been a better time where young people actually have tons and tons of cash on them to make some serious moves. Unlike depressions or other corrections, people have less disposable income, but during the pandemic there's actually been a huge increase in people's disposable income. It was like actually like an 8% growth within Canada alone. So just knowing that there's young people sitting on cash, they can actually just put a small percentage of it, because like starting up with e-commerce is not that expensive. They can really make a really great return on investment on that when just starting it off.
Amazing. Well, great points there, Vas, and thanks for that insight. As ever, thanks to you as well, Maury, for giving in your 2 cents and helping us make this Wednesday One Thing a pretty good look into really what's happening with the Gen Z kids and entrepreneurship in general and e-commerce in particular. So thanks as ever for your time, everybody, and excited to catch up again next week. This is this week's Wednesday One Thing. Cheers.